We are live. We are live. Welcome to College Football's Peek Around the Corner with your host, Greg Flugar. We cover everything in college football because we love everything in college football. We love everything in college football. And if you do as well, please subscribe to our ever-growing channel. Smash that like button if you like our content. Share the video with your family and friends. Share it with your psychiatrist, your priest, your significant other. Share it across your personal media social platforms. Welcome into the house, into the studio that sits on the corner of Keith Jackson Parkway and Kurt Gowdy Avenue. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid to be a PATC legend. In the comments section or in the phone calls, the number is on the ticker. You can call us tonight. It's going to be a short monologue. Here, we did a live show earlier today. I wanted to say thank you to all in the PATC community for the 1 year anniversary at the start of this show. We've been talking about conference realignment. We've been giving you the straight shoot on it. We've been giving you our best peek around the corner. And I think for the most part, we've been nailing it story after story after story. The one thing that has bothered me about this whole, a lot of things have bothered me about this whole conference realignment is the state of what is the current status of Washington State and Oregon State. And I think most people agree with me. These schools are being left behind. They're not going to be part of a Power 5 autonomy conference any longer. And there are great fans of both those schools, some great student athletes, some great support Washington State is in a little area, Pullman. Oregon State is obviously, Corvallis, obviously the second school in the state. And Washington State's the second school in their state. But it has bothered me. It has bothered me to no end. And and I haven't even been, because I've been so focused on the happenings with Colorado being at the center of the stage, Notre Dame, Oregon and Washington 5 months from now or 5 years from now, they're going to go to the Big Ten. I have rarely speaked of Oregon State and Washington State. Tonight, I saw a couple articles pop up, and I said, you know what? We're going to do it. Maybe only 5 people join us in the chat room. That's fine, but we're going to do it. We're going to send some positive waves towards Washington and Oregon State. And you know what? It looks like there's a little mini bidding war going on with Washington State and Oregon State between the Mountain West Conference and the American Athletic Conference. I read some fascinating articles. We're going to get to that. You all know how this is here. Cloak and dagger. Drink responsibly. We haven't been doing too many evening shows here at Peek Around the Corner, but we're doing one tonight. Cloak and dagger. And please go to our merchandise store. Check out the merch. Buy yourself a hoodie. Buy yourself one of these mugs. The trucker hat. We also have t-shirts. Okay, let's get to some positivity for Washington State and Oregon State. Hold on one second. Let me pop this up. First of all, I want to thank everybody who's coming into the chat. Skull Ducky, PATC Part 2, Bruce Harris, a Boomer, West Virginia guy back in the house. Washington State to the Big 12, please. I don't think that's going to happen, but looks like there's a little bit of a bidding war going on between the Mountain West Conference and the American Athletic Conference, the AAC. Luis Carlos Diaz, 2 live shows in one day. Wreckham Auto Raider, Texas Tech Red Raiders, Derek Marie, R. Webb, Randy Taylor, David Keitzker, Stephen McNeely, Secret Agent. Uh-oh. The evil Badger's in the house. Jeff Olson. Look out. Everybody duck. Jay Puremutter. Mr. Brewing is in the house. B, where does this leave the Mountain West Conference? We're going to talk about it. We are going to talk about it. The PATC Theater has that new carpet smell. San Diego State with the eye emoji. Kenner Bowman. Hello, Gray from Colorado. Hello, Kenner from the great state of Minnesota. Buckshot Kid. J. Rod, thanks for coming on in. Love watching Greg Airdrum. Thank you, sir. Kirk Bender, thanks for coming on in. Alan Tran, thanks for coming on in. Joe Z, Bob Stacker, Tyler Tuffy Duffy. Stanford and Cal will end up in the Big Ten at reduced rates, even lower than Oregon and Washington. Tuffy Duffy has called his shot, or her shot. Ryan Brooks, dang, head wasn't on a swivel. Rebecca Salisbury, no, but they're mad, so they'll try anything. Adam Vulture, Big 12, save Oregon State. Sterry, guns up, go Gophers. Glad I checked to see if anything was going on tonight. Thanks for all coming in. Let's go to a very interesting article written by Chris Murray. NSN Nevada Sportsnet. I'm going to read this article. A link is provided in the description. Again, we're talking about Oregon State and Washington State. We haven't talked enough about those two programs. Tonight we're going to do it. As college athletics, as the world turns saga unfurls, Wednesday was not a great day for the Mountain West. This was yesterday. This article was written tonight, or this afternoon. It wasn't a terrible day, but it could have been a day that ended the Pac-12 and bolstered the Mountain West. That would have been the outcome if the ACC invited Stanford and Cal to its conference. But multiple reports Wednesday night said the likelihood is on life support after hitting roadblocks. While that move hasn't been completely ruled out, the Pac-12's two Bay Area schools playing in a conference that's 100% east of the Mississippi River was always an odd fit. So, ACC completely ruled out from getting Stanford in California? Okay, maybe not 100%, but we don't believe it's going to happen here at Peek Around the Corner for the reasons we've gone into the other shows. So where does that leave things? If Stanford and Cal fall short of getting an invitation from the new Power Four, the SEC, the Big Ten, the Big 12, the ACC, as expected, they will most likely redouble their efforts to try and save the Pac-12, which is down to 4 schools. The path forward won't be easy. Adding the top echelon Mountain West schools for the 2025 season seems untenable because of the league's $34 million exit fee. I don't think this is possible. If Stanford and California cannot get to the ACC, and the Pac-12 thinks they're going to bring Mountain West schools into their conference, I don't see how it's possible. Each of those Mountain West schools would have to pay $34 million. Are you going to bring all the schools in? I just don't see it happening. Perhaps. Now, this is the PATC money shot right here of this article. There's a couple of them. Perhaps the Pac-12 grabs 4+ American Athletic Conference schools. A Tulane, an SMU, a Memphis or Rice for the 2025 season to stay alive one more season before adding the 4+ Mountain West schools of 2025 and 26 when the exit fee is lower. That multi-year plan could rebuild the Pac-12 numbers to a point it survives even if retaining the power conference status, and they're not going to retain the autonomy conference status. But isn't that interesting? Could the Pac-12, Oregon State, Washington State, California, and Stanford, if California and Stanford cannot get to the ACC, the Big 12 is done expanding at this point. We believe the Big Ten is cold on Stanford and California at this time. Could those 4 Pac-12 schools grab a Tulane, SMU, Memphis, and Rice? Would those schools be interested in this gambit to leave the AAC? Now, for Rice, this is their first year in the AAC. For those schools to leave the ACC, come join us, California and Stanford, Washington and Oregon State. And then the next year, we go grab ourselves 4 Mountain West schools, a San Diego State and 3 others, in which their exit fee goes from $34 million to $17 million. Interesting. I happen to believe that Tulane wouldn't do it. Probably not SMU. Another option could be trying to talk the Mountain West into dissolving, which would require at least 9 of the 12 schools to vote in favor of that. So another option for Oregon State and Washington State, which we are focusing on tonight. But for those 4 schools, the Pac-4, California, Stanford, Oregon State, and Washington State, another option would talk the Mountain West in dissolving. Have 9 of the schools just say, we're done. Kind of like the ACC dissolution theory of 8 schools voting to dissolve the conference. The Mountain West, it's actually stated in the bylaws it takes 9 of the 12 schools to dissolve the conference. Now, this is from a Nevada paper article. So it says the scariest proposition for the Nevada Wolfpack would be 9 Mountain West schools abandoning ship and moving on to the Pac-12 while leaving 3 schools behind. The Mountain West released a statement of solidarity Wednesday morning, but we'll see how loyal those members remain. Clearly, San Diego State wants out. Boise State has wanted out of the Mountain West Conference long before that. Playing under the Pac-12 brand as Mountain West schools without requiring an exit fee is alluring. That possibility remains on the table after the ACC gave Stanford and Cal the Heisman stiff arm. So what do you think, PATC community? Is this a possibility? The Mountain West Conference dissolving 9 votes? 9 of those schools promised to join the 4 Pac-12 schools and then add another school for a 14-team new conference? As you can see, keeping the Pac-12 alive won't be easy. It would require multi-year pledges from the AAC, the Mountain West schools, or a hostile takeover of the Mountain West. And nothing the Pac-12 Commissioner George Kliavkoff has accomplished to date. Has he accomplished anything for the conference to date? Engenders belief that he'll be able to pull that off. I concur. I believe the chances are very remote that the Pac-12 could lure 4 AAC schools in for next year and then 4 from the Mountain West the year after. That's why the Mountain West remains in a power position even through Wednesday's turn of events. We're not the best case scenario. We are sitting here Thursday night, ladies and gentlemen. Thursday night, and the end game is a-coming. It's a-coming quick. This reminds me of Thursday of August 3rd, to be quite honest with you. I think things could be settled here in the next 24 hours. This is Dennis. We'll get back to the article. We'll finish the article. Then I want to get back to something else. That is why the Mountain West remains in a power position. We know landing Stanford and Cal for the Mountain West is a long shot, given the academic prowess related snootiness of those schools have about joining the Mountain West, which consists of solid academic institutions, but nowhere near the realm of Stanford and California. That leaves Washington State and Oregon State as the main Mountain West targets. And both Washington State and Oregon State would immediately become power programs in the Mountain West. Washington State President Kirk Schultz has already publicly admitted to ESPN the Cougars' athletic department is in bad shape, and the Northwest Pac-12 properties may have to accept an invitation to join the Mountain West, and we rely on private dollars to make sure our budgets are at the top of the league. Washington State and Oregon State are the Mountain West main targets. Now, for there to be a bidding war, you need to have somebody else going after you at the same time, and we'll get to that in a second. Speaking to Bronco Nation News and KTIK 95.3 FM on Wednesday, Mountain West Commissioner Gloria Nevarez said the conference did not land on a clear path after its board of directors meeting Monday night. But she did say the conference is united as a league, even though she's not naive to think the market could change and unity could fracture. So this is a commissioner, Gloria Nevarez, who's speaking the truth. Yeah, we're united. Right now we are united. The market could change. We could fracture just like anybody else. Navarez did not rule out a merger with the Pac-12, but that does not appear to be the best result for the Mountain West unless the conference that comes out of the ashes of this merger retains autonomous status, which is not going to happen. Now, if the Pac-12 is not able to get the numbers required to survive, and we don't think they will, Washington State and Oregon State could be forced to pick between joining the Mountain West or the American. The American has a more lucrative media deal with $7 million annually going to each school. That's more than the Mountain West, although those schools are responsible for some production costs. So the gap is not as large as it looks like at first blush. A good chunk of those games, a good chunk of the AAC games also run on ESPN Plus, that network streaming service. The Mountain West television deal pays schools about $3.2 million per year, with Boise State getting a little bit more, $5 million. If it gets to that point, Washington State and Oregon State must pick between the Mountain West or the American, and it will be interesting to see the bidding war. It will be interesting to see if the Mountain West Board of Directors are willing to give those schools financial concessions on TV money like it did with Boise State a decade ago, in a decision that was quickly regretted by much of the conference. Do you think, PATC community, do you think that the Mountain West, the Board of Directors, would give a little bit more money to Oregon State and Washington State? And by the way, the Mountain West has a TV deal, Fox, CBS Sports. You think they would, I think they would elevate all the Mountain West schools and giving everybody a little bit more money. All of them. I think it would raise all boats. And that gives opportunity for Washington State and Oregon State to get a little bit more than anybody else in the conference. Navarez, the Mountain West president, told BJ Rains and Mike Prater, the Mountain West has made its interest in Washington State and Oregon State clear and is willing to get creative to add those schools to its membership. So there it is. Washington State and Oregon State, they've got some leverage in this. Navarez wants them. The Mountain West Conference wants them in the conference. And I got to believe they've been given a signal from Fox that yes, bring them. We are interested. I think everybody's going to get a bump in pay in the Mountain West. And that bump in pay might make it where Washington and Oregon State would get as much in the Mountain West as they would if they joined the AAC. You see, I think that's why we've titled the show a mini bidding war going on for Washington State and Oregon State. And we wanted to highlight this at Peek Around the Corner, because those two schools have been left out. The consolidation has not been kind to either school. And this is some good news. And that's why we're doing a live show tonight. Washington State and Oregon State, a bidding war. Let's get back to the article. Without going into a lot of details, we are looking to every possible option with every possible lever that we can pull on to be creative and innovative, Navarez told Bronco Nation News. Dollars certainly are a piece of that. We are modeling and working through those. Can you get creative in scheduling and travel partners? I think protecting the competitive integrity so at the end of the day our best teams are competing in our championship in order to get that berth in the postseason is also the underlying goal, one that's important in all these configurations. We are looking at everything, leaving no stone unturned. If this, while Oregon State and Washington State have to be disappointed, at least there is some good news. There is interest. And I think there's going to be a little bit of a bidding war. And I think it's going to result, I think we're going to have resolution real soon. Back to the article. Narvaez continued to discuss why the Mountain West would make a better landing spot for Washington State and Oregon State than the American. They know the American is their chief rival in getting the Cougars and the Beavers. Narvaez, the Mountain West is a better landing spot. The American lost some major powers this offseason. The departures of Cincinnati, Houston, UCF to the Big 12. The Mountain West media deal, which could be sweetened if the conference added a Washington State and Oregon State, has only 3 years remaining on. Then Commissioner Craig Thompson led the charge on a 6-year deal rather than the Americans' 12-year pact around the same time. When the Mountain West deal was signed, Thompson said the smaller term would give the conference more future flexibility, which could be a plus in these negotiations. So Washington and Oregon State, there's a bidding war for you. You can make more money in the short term, maybe, at the AAC. But the Mountain West Conference, if you go to the Mountain West Conference, they're going to be redoing their deal here shortly, in 3 years, 2 years from now. Narvaez is making her pitch in public. You better believe she's making this pitch in private to the Cougars and the Beavers. Narvaez, we have linear rights deal, fully linear. No streaming that we go to market within 2 more years. It's up in 3 more years, Narvaez told Bronco Nation News and KTIK 95.3 FM. We have that. We have the ability to go to market sooner. I think the American has the media rights deal out to 2034. You see what Narvaez is doing here? And you know, whatever she's saying in private to Oregon State and Washington State is even more aggressive than this. In geography, certainly you save a lot if you stay within your region. More importantly, I just think there's a lot of commonality between Oregon State and Washington State if they were to consider us, the Mountain West. You think about the schools in our league, there's a lot of fit there. A lot of similar land-grant, large public institutions, only show in towns, really strong fan bases. I don't want to jump in front of the process that Oregon State and Washington State are going through, but we're ready and we're putting a lot of thinking into it. This is a strong push by Commissioner Narvaez of the Mountain West. Strong push. So while Wednesday night's development, that was last night, didn't completely KO the Pac-12 and turn all the power to the Mountain West, the conference, the Mountain West, remains in good shape as the Pac-12's remaining 4-figure schools out, they figure out their futures. But one question looms for me is whether the Mountain West would be willing to give Washington State and Oregon State a disproportionate paycheck when it comes to the television revenues like it did Boise State. That might be required. That might be required to keep those schools, Oregon State, Washington State, out of the American, which can offer more immediate TV money. And I can't imagine Washington State and Oregon State would be happy getting less money than Boise State from the Mountain West. And if the Mountain West does make that concession for Washington State and Oregon State, how would San Diego State, the Mountain West top athletic department, and one that has shown its itchy trigger finger in recent months, how would San Diego State react to that? Tune in next time for College Athletics' latest episode, As the World Turns. Holy smokes. The whole article Read the whole thing. There's a link provided in the description. Oregon State, Washington State. They are wanted by the Mountain West. They are wanted by the AAC. What do you think they should do? PATC community, what do you think they should do? Take the short term. They're going to get more money from the AAC right off the bat than they would the Mountain West. But the AAC's contract goes all the way to 2034. Their media contract. Mountain West ends in 2026. They get to re-up. But there is a mini bidding war going on for Washington and Oregon State. And I thought it was important that we finally at least put Washington State and Oregon State in a position of power for at least one night here at Peek Around the Corner. I think this is going to end relatively soon. A lot of people are saying take the Mountain West. Michael Bias, B, Jeff Olson, Tough Tony. A lot of people are saying Mountain West over the AAC. Lannis 31 says Michael Resco needs to get on the phone, push for an AAC Pac-12 merger in order to attempt to save the A5 status and bump AAC's media payouts into the 8 figures. Great comment by Lannis 31. I think Stanford and California are going to be more attracted to some of those AAC schools than the Mountain West, and that's not a shot at the Mountain West schools. But there are a couple schools out there in the AAC that California and Stanford could see themselves as a member, as associates in the athletic conference. Tulane, Rice. This one is tough, Nick Flynn. This one is tough. He says it. If you want to cut down on travel costs, benefit student athletes, you go to the Mountain West. If you want solely money, get AAC. I think the Mountain West, because then you become the highest G5 for the conference, for the college football playoffs. Our web says Oresco has ESPN connections to work a deal to compete with an Mountain West Conference media package. True, but they've already signed the deal. The AAC signed a long-term deal. The AAC is like the ACC. They're the G5 ACC. They signed the deal. It was a little bit more money than the other G5 conferences, but the deal goes all the way out to 2034. I don't think ESPN is willing to renegotiate unless you get Oregon State and Washington State into the conference. If AAC gets Washington State and Oregon State in the conference, I think they would all get a bump up in pay. That's why I believe, peek around the corner, that Oregon State, Washington State, as we sit here tonight doing a live show, there's a mini bidding war going on for those two schools. And remember, Oregon State and Washington State, two very good schools, Pac-12 universities, right? But both of those schools would not play this game of the Mountain West is not good enough academically for us. The AAC is not good enough academically for us. So they are willing, they're open to themselves. They have leveraged themselves into this bidding war between the two conferences. And I think the end game is soon. It could be tomorrow. So this is fascinating. And so that's why we had to do a live show talking about this issue. Dave Bauer, Oregon State, Washington State should go to the AAC for Eastern eyeballs and not be trapped in the Mountain Pacific where no one watches if they hope for promotion in the future. So Dave Bauer, he's looking at eyeballs. He's looking at more of a national, somewhat national conference, right? More exposure to the AAC. Very good point by Dave Bauer. Very good point. You see, back and forth, AAC, Mountain West, AAC, Mountain West. Where should Washington State and Oregon State go? They've been waiting for the Stanford and California domino to fall. It hasn't fallen yet. This thing could go either way. Lannis 31, Dave Bauer. Yep. The Mountain West Conference could be the G5 version of the Pac-12 as far as being a regional conference. LFG, thank you. Carried us through the dead parts of the offseason. You're welcome, sir. Earlier today, we did a live show, and we went through my 3 picks. I'm just going to go through them real quick. First 3 picks. PATC, we're going from Greg the Cooler to Greg the Healer. We've got Louisiana Tech, -10. We're giving Florida International 10 points. Hank Bachmeier, the quarterback to transfer from Boise State. Smoke Harris, the great wide receiver of Louisiana Tech, 136 catches the last 2 years. We got Louisiana Tech. We've also got the under, 42.5. New Mexico State finished last season very strong. Jerry Kill led New Mexico State to the second bowl game since 1960. But I know Jerry Kill. I know how he coaches. His offenses start slow. Very, very slow. Very, very, very slow. And UMass had a horrific offense last year. They do have a transfer coming in from Clemson, a highly rated quarterback that couldn't get off the bench. So we'll see what happens there. But I got under 42.5. And then we've got Notre Dame in Dublin, Ireland. We've got the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. We're going to give 20.5 points. We're going to give that to Navy. Navy's got a new head coach. He's a former third defensive coordinator. He's done a great job, Newberry. But we got Notre Dame. We got Sam Hartman. We got the great Joe Alt, the tackle for Notre Dame's offensive lineman. Notre Dame Fighting Irish is going to cover the 20.5. So we got Notre Dame, Louisiana Tech, and under of the New Mexico game. Those are our first 3 picks. We're going to be Greg the Heater this year. We're going to go at least 2-1 at week 0. Not so fast, my friend. Ryan Brooks coming in. Not so fast, my friend. Greg the Heater, 212 Fahrenheit. Thank you to Mazda. Greg picks are in. Vegas is suddenly short on cash. All right. I'm not sure if you're ripping me or whatever. Kenneth Maynard says AAC. So we got a split here. Greg, can you set the theater? I think we're going to wait till tomorrow on a few things. We're going to definitely wait till tomorrow on the ACC theater. On the Pac-12 Big 12 saga, that is over. We're going to do something about the theater tomorrow, Ryan. So hang close. Stay close with us. Watch us tomorrow. We're going to reset the ACC theater tomorrow. I think we got a really good chance of doing that with some good information. So, okay, let's get to your phone calls. Again, we're talking about a subject that we haven't talked about really. Washington State and Oregon State. I felt that we should do it tonight. There's a mini bidding war between the two schools. And I think at least there is some good news for those two schools, those two great fan bases. Oregon State baseball, incredible. Oregon State's going to have a really good football team this year. Washington State's had some good football teams in the year past. Mike Leach, I think it was only fair. I think it was only fair for us to do a show tonight talking about Washington State and Oregon State. And I want to get back to the phone lines are open. If you want to give a call now, you can talk about anything college football. The number is 763-260-1333. You can talk about anything. I just want to show This Dennis Dodd tweet from early this morning. Sources: California Stanford to the ACC looks unlikely at this time. Me? Remember where we were a week ago at this moment. Conclusion: stay tuned. Where we were a week ago was August 3rd on a Thursday. I did an episode that said it was titled July, August 4th, the death blow to the Pac-12, something like that. And what happened August 4th, there was a death blow to the Pac-12, and it all crumbled. I think right now, tonight, into tomorrow, I think we're going to get resolution on Washington State, Oregon State, Stanford, California, unless one of those things where the Pac-12 is going to take 4 from one conference, 4 from the next year. One of these very complicated long shot scenarios. Then maybe that won't be resolved by tomorrow. But I think we're going to get something resolved by tomorrow. I think reporters out there think there's going to be something resolved by tomorrow, or at least this weekend. John? Appreciate the super chat. Would Stanford and California come with them to the AAC? Thank you for your generosity. I appreciate it, John. Once again, I think there's more of a shot. Stanford and California have to go somewhere. We predicted, we gave it our best shot that they would end up in the Mountain West. Even though that sounds crazy. It's probably not going to happen. But every other scenario, there's issues with. We did not think that California, Stanford would get to the ACC because we didn't think they would get the votes. So far, that was Tuesday. Yesterday, it all blew up on a Wednesday, and it looks like they haven't gotten the votes. I don't think they will, but we'll see. We'll see. If California, Stanford gets to the ACC, we'll take a big L on this show. And we'll start the next show talking about the big L. But I don't think they're going to get to ACC. I don't think they're going to get to the Big Ten right now. We reported a couple weeks ago it was cold between Stanford. They haven't done the work. The Big Ten has not done the work with Stanford and California. That's why California, Stanford is talking with the ACC and others. So if you take out the ACC and the Big Ten, what are your options? The Mountain West, the AAC, Stanford going independent, or somehow the Pac-4 backfills and remains a conference. None of those separately is likely to happen, but one of those things has to happen. Could Stanford and California come to the AC? Yes. Could they come to the Mountain West? Yes. Because they've got to do something. They've got to end up somewhere. They're not going to just shut down the athletic department. Could they go to independent? Yes. But man, that would be scary, crazy. One of these things has to happen. Or Stanford football could go down to Division III. Thank you, John. I don't think that's going to happen. Again, phone lines are open, 763-260-1333. Joe brings up a good point. Tony, I'll get to that in a second. I'll get to this in a second. I did bring that up I was on Big Ten Ted show a couple nights ago. Or was it last night? I don't even remember. We talked about that. I'm going to talk about that in a second. But Joe says AAC, superior states for recruiting: Texas, Florida, Louisiana. There is advantages that the AAC has over the Mountain West. They have some schools that would be attractive, at least for California Stanford, on an academic research level. Rice and Tulane. They bring in more money, AAC, for right now than the Mountain West. California's athletic department is in debt more than any other school in the Power 5. California Berkeley's athletic department is hundreds and hundreds of million dollars in debt. Recruiting area. Yes, you can make that argument as well. But again, AAC, their media deal goes all the way to 2034. That's tough. That's tough to swallow for California. And what is the exit fee? The exit fee is like $30 million for the AAC to get out of the conference. If California and Stanford get a knock on the door by the Big Ten years down the road. It's a tough decision. It's a tough decision. Michael Bias says the AAC is more unstable than the Mountain West because the AAC lost Cincy, UCF in Houston.
Call from
Attorney Dave.
Attorney Dave is on the line. What's going on, sir? We're still waiting on the Florida State. We're still waiting. August 15th. It's August 10th.
It's coming. First, I wanted to just congratulate you on a year of fantastic commentary and breaking all this stuff. It's been a heck of a job that you've done this year. So
appreciate
congratulations on this and this great show that you got going.
I appreciate it, Attorney Dave. Thank you very much.
Let me ask you this, just in your opinion, how did Stanford get here? I know, it's like last year at this time when you had started this show, the discussions a lot of the time were Stanford to the Big Ten.
Yes, sir.
How did things end up in a place where the number one overall academic institution playing FBS football is in a situation where they can't find a home and are getting blocked by 4 teams right now in the ACC?
Yeah, isn't that incredible? That is my biggest L. That's my biggest L, Attorney Dave. I put out a tweet, I don't know, probably, I can't remember what the date was, but it was soon after USC going to the Big Ten. And we knew that Washington and Oregon were the next, were the next target along with Stanford and of course Notre Dame. But I put out a tweet saying if I was at the sports book and if the wager on this was up on the sportsbook board and it said, is Stanford going to the Big Ten? And you could put a wager on that, yes or no, I would have said yes. And I put out a tweet saying, and I would go to the betting window and I would hit that button and my ticker, it would run out of paper. It would go blur. It would spit out so many tickets for me. So I would have lost a lot if that would have been up on the sportsbook board. I just wanted to make a point. I thought the Big Ten presidents were going to be able to get what they wanted, which was Stanford. Even though their valuation is very, very low when it comes for Fox Sports. Okay?
Right.
Even though they're highly populated, even though that demographics up there in Northern California has a lot of purchasing power, the valuation comes in very low, Attorney Dave.
Right.
So they haven't been able to swing it.
The 4 schools that are supposedly blocking Stanford right now into the ACC. You're under the impression that it's Florida State, Clemson, and then who are the other two schools that you're under the impression are blocking this?
Well, it was reported that it was North Carolina, North Carolina State, Florida State, Clemson, and I believe Virginia was the fifth school.
And I mean, I know that you're feeling as if this is probably dead. With the Big Ten being able to kind of point to Fox and say, "Well, Fox is not giving us the money." I don't know. In the circles that you run in, talking to a lot of the sources that you have,
Yeah.
how do you think this will impact those schools? As clearly Stanford and Cal and kind of their influential alumni, whether they care or not that much about football, they do care about their schools.
Yeah.
And kind of we'll say the black eye aspect of things. It's one thing to say, oh, well, Fox is not going to take you, and those Big Ten presidents who are all AAU members saying that.
Yeah.
But it's another thing to say, well, Florida State and Clemson and UNC and UVA, for example, or maybe it's NC State, whoever those four are right now, they're holding. It's another thing to say, oh, well, those four schools blackballed you from joining the ACC. How do you think that will impact the landscape even kind of moving forward? Because I'm not so sure that it won't impact some things. As in, not that again, Cal and Stanford are these big time football loving schools, but Stanford. One thing I noted to somebody recently is Florida State's looking into private equity, and where is a disproportionate amount of the private equity that exists in the United States? It's in Silicon Valley. And what school controls a disproportionate amount of the private equity that's in the United States? Stanford.
Yeah.
So, what do you see it impacting any of the landscape and kind of this overt blackballing of Stanford and Cal from the ACC by wherever these four schools are, but definitely FSU and Clemson being among them?
Well, you raise a great point there. So you can think like, so I'm a Big Ten president, right? And of course, I'm rubbing elbows with, well, at the time, Stanford's president. I've got a lot of friends. There's a lot of influence that Stanford holds over the academic world and the research world, like you're saying. And here I am, and the Big Ten. Yeah, we've had internal talks about what are we going to do when the ACC gets to the point where we can poach from the ACC, and we've gone over scenarios, and Florida State maybe has been mentioned in our scenarios, right? And here is here is Florida State, a part of this blocking brigade, keeping the great university, Stanford University, out of Autonomy 5, sports. So that's what you're kind of saying, right? It's like, could this backfire, right, on these schools that are blocking?
Yeah, I just think about how small the circles are. In academia. This is not some mass. I mean, and not just how small the circles are, but how influential Stanford and Cal are, and the whole University of California regions are in that academic world. Where sure, they can sort of point to Fox and say, "Oh, Fox won't give us the money. We can't afford to take Stanford and Cal, even though we have these long-term relationships with them, especially some of these research universities." But to sort of overtly, and be it as it is, the interests aren't aligning right now, but to kind of overtly block them, how that might impact the decision makers, especially as ESPN seems to be on board with this. They're not standing in the way of this. This is truly, a block by four schools.
Well,
right
ESPN,
now over the of the rest of them.
ESPN can't really block it because according to their contract with ESPN, they have to they agree to pro rata to what what the ACC if they would expand. So
Exactly. And
ESPN,
I'll say this too, from
yeah,
my one little legal point is that it's probably to ESPN's advantage and probably Fox's advantage as well. All the Pac-12 schools find a home, especially with Cal and Stanford, because
yeah,
as we know, they have lots of lawyers and lots of folks that can will be on the lookout for ways to seek some revenge on some of the folks that they think have hurt them. And there's lots of discussions of antitrust issues that we're constantly hearing about. Lots of other discussions. It's interesting because I just I don't think anybody, especially a decade ago, with Stanford that was stronger in football and coming off of the Harbaugh years and those, and what we saw from them. It's hard to imagine that a decade later that they'd be getting blackballed by Florida State and Clemson from getting into the ACC. And that's reality right now. And, I wonder how, and I know I'm going to let you go here, but I just wonder how that might impact the politics behind the scenes of things maybe a little bit more than maybe some of us understand.
Got it. I think one thing that's that sort of maybe nullifies it is from the Big Ten president aspect when they're maybe looking at like a potential ACC school down the road and they're seeing that potential ACC school block the movement of Stanford and California into the ACC. One of the things that the Big Ten presidents know they've been presented with over these last months is just the low valuation that Stanford and California has received. So in the back of their minds, they're probably saying, you know what? We can understand why Florida State, we can kind of understand from Florida State's point of view. Right. Because Northern California, it's been projected that, they would not buy the Big Ten Network. They would not buy the subscriptions. They don't watch football. Not only don't they go to the games, but the eyeballs for TV, they're just not on it. So maybe from that aspect, maybe the Big Ten presidents can understand why a Florida State, a Virginia would say no.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
All right, Greg. Well, one last question maybe for you. What do you see? We've talked about the FSU, their decisions here over the next week. I highly doubt that they're going to take that step, just because they just don't know whether if they were to exit and they can't get out of the grant of rights, that they could be in no man's land next year at this time, which would be probably one of the worst case scenarios for them. But with Sankey's, with the conversation that Greg Sankey had with Paul Feinbaum.
Hey guys, Attorney Dave, I gotta go 1 second. I gotta check on my father. Everyone, just hang on. Sorry.
No problem. No problem.
Okay, sorry about that, everybody. I want to get to some super chats here. Fake Tom Osborne, complacency kills. That's why Stanford is left out. The whole complacency of the Pac-12. That's what killed. Not Pac-12 not expanding to the central time zone with schools that were available. Many of them being good Big 12 schools. They kept saying no, 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 no. That's what killed the Pac-12. Absolutely correct. John Teal, thank you again. A couple years down years doesn't make Stanford complacent. That's true as well.
Call from.
Hello.
Two.
Who's on the line? Hello. Hello. Somebody was there.
Oh, hi. Sorry, my phone was on mute. It's Ryan.
Ryan, the floor is yours.
Hey, first thing I wanted to echo what most people have been saying of like you did phenomenal coverage throughout this whole thing the past year.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And one thing that kind of shocked me with, especially it started with like the Colorado when they made the move, is listening to like some of the media that were like, wow, this came out of nowhere. This is completely mind-boggling. I was like, but was it? And so but it's kind of shocking how many people kind of ignored what was coming. But I really have been impressed with your coverage. I talked to one of my friends that's a sports writer probably a couple months back, and I just asked his opinion, like, what do you think about realignment? He's like, oh, I don't think it's coming. There's nothing's going to happen. Nobody's leaving the Pac-12 for the Big 12. That just isn't going to be a thing. And I was like, well, I think it is. And you're like, well, you're just listening to people you want to, that tell you what you want to hear. And, I kind of dug in my ground and was like, maybe I was more apologetic than you would have been, but I was like, yeah, this is what I believe, though.
Yeah. It's not to butt in, but just I think it was difficult for a lot of people to see it coming because everybody is, you're a college football fan. You've been a college football fan for years, possibly decades. You sort of get conditioned to how things are. There's no way a large research university would join a Big 12. It just doesn't happen. The problem is, as we've talked about, there's two realities in the story that a lot of people didn't pick up on. One is there's a change in landscape of college football. Some of those rules do not apply anymore. And number two is the Pac-12, the networks decided that they did not want a one region Pacific conference. And the network spoke on that months ago. Now, not everybody had those numbers, right? I was very fortunate to get those numbers. I was very fortunate to have really good, smart people tell me, yeah, the networks are saying no to the Pac-12, basically. They're not going to get a deal that's going to be anywhere close to the Big 12 when it comes to linear network. So that's, a lot of people had a struggle with it because what happened wasn't traditional. This was different. And we're going to be seeing a lot more different stuff going on here in the next decade. So buckle up. We don't know what's going to happen, but we're going to do the best that we can to provide you a peek around the corner. But back to your phone call.
No, for sure. And I kind of followed up with my friend after this all went down on Friday. And he was like, his comment was like, I just could not, I had more faith in Pac-12 leadership that I should have. He's like, I just couldn't imagine that we'd get here. And it's unfortunate because really the fact of the matter is the Pac-12 didn't have to get to that point, right? Like this has been probably bad decisions over a decade, but especially really bad decisions over the last 2 years that got there. Like even if they'd made a couple different decisions, like what happened on Friday, or it's almost 2 Fridays ago now, but that we wouldn't have gotten to that point. Like they take the deal in when they had the offer from ESPN originally, but I mean, everybody thought, oh, we're going to hit gold in the open market. Unfortunately, it came out of the open market with worse exposure and less money. Mm-hmm. And so it just kind of unfortunately backfired on them. but I'm really really impressed. I felt really validated in trusting your sources. I can totally see why your sources trust you. I don't think you burn any of them ever, and then so that's why they trust you.
Yeah.
But I really respect that when you take even the littlest L, even if it's like you got everything right, but one detail was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Like you legitimately take the L on that detail. Where I mean, most people don't do that. Like I think we all probably were listening to different coverages as all this went down on the Friday it did. But
yeah.
when I was listening to the Monty show, that was kind of who I was on that day, and then binge watched 365 later.
Yeah.
But like at one point they were like talking about, oh, we take our L's when we get them. I'm like, I've never heard them take a single L. Like I've heard them manipulate their L's into a nuanced win, but I've never heard them like do that. But you are the exact opposite. You're very transparent. You're very like, even if I got 90% of this wrong, I got the one thing wrong, I'm going to let you know I got that one thing wrong. And I really appreciate that.
I appreciate it.
And I think that it's interesting, like, I mean, on the polar opposite, I think that I'm really curious of, like, what happens to John Canzano after this whole ordeal. Because I feel like he, unfortunately, flushed down a lot of his journalistic integrity out the window so that he could push sometimes things that were leaning just to the Pac-12, some things that were, like, outright wrong, maybe being manipulated by sources, but like being a willing participant in that.
Yeah.
But one thing that I've been thinking about with him, I'm pretty sure that I'm sure he's had people following him just wondering, okay, what's he saying again? But I'm sure he's also had like built up kind of almost a cult-like following from the Pac-12 fans that want to believe nothing was ever wrong. None of this was bad. Like, what happened, there was no possible scenario that happened. Like, he was at one point probably the only source you could get that from. Like, even Wilner, while Wilner clearly leaned to the Pac-12, he was very much a journalist, and not all of the stories he wrote were like sunshine and rainbows. In fact, some of probably the most hard to take stories came from Wilner, as far as like, guess what, Comcast isn't $50 million. It's worse, you know. And so it will be interesting, because I think that will have really hurt his credibility going forward. And then even the people that were really big fans of him are probably going to look at maybe resent him for misleading them in a way. So it will be interesting to see how he comes out of it. I think everybody else is fine. Like Wilner, he's a great reporter. Like through this whole process, I've gotten a lot of respect for him, even if like he wasn't necessarily the side that I would look to, but he's somebody, like, if I want to see the other side of it, he's kind of the person I would look at. But no, I just want to commend you. And the other thing I was just thinking, I find it hard to believe, and I don't think it's in the Mount West school's really best interest to, like, the option of, like, let's dissolve our conference and let's go to the Pac-12, just because I think that's a heavy risk, because you have a media deal. And we saw a Pac-12 that wasn't projecting to get a deal good enough to satisfy the Pac-12, couldn't get a deal for the Pac-10, couldn't get a deal for the Pac-9, like Pac-4 plus a bunch of Mountain West schools. I just wouldn't put my hands in, especially George Kliavkoff fans. That seems a little bit risky. And I don't think that, kind of my last thing, I don't think that it's personal for the ACC of not wanting Cal and Stanford. Like I can see like how maybe that would be taken that way from their end, but like the people that are blocking it are probably blocking it because either they're not going to get any more money, which like you're already in a deal you're not happy with. You don't want to end up in a deal that you're not happy with less money. So I don't think it's personal for them. So, but that's everything I've got today.
Got it.
So.
I appreciate your very kind words. Please call again. And thank you so much for being part of the PATC community. Appreciate it.
For sure. Have a great day.
Thank you. Couple notes on that. Yeah, well, those are very kind words. So I want to thank the caller for all that. I think some of these reporters, and I'm not going to name them by names, but I think they had a very limited. I think they got their sources came from maybe one tree, and I don't think a lot of people were talking out of the Pac-12. There wasn't much to talk about because you got to remember they were not getting presented deals. The Pac-12 wasn't giving anybody in the Pac-12 something to positively leak. There was nothing there. So it was like a barren desert. The reporters want to drink. They want to get something. There was a couple wells of water, right, that they kept drinking. The same places the reporter was drinking from. But that water, it wasn't accurately portraying what was going on. There was a lot of hope, but not a lot of accuracy out of that water that the reporter was drinking from. And you would think after a few months where you would say something in public, saying your sources are telling you this, and it came out to be incorrect, that you sort of write off, okay, I really can't take this information from this source, even if it happens to be from the Washington State president, Kirk Schultz, allegedly, for example. So I think some reporters got caught in that. There was, during the Pac-12 media days, or no, I'm sorry, it was before the Pac-12 media days, where the gentleman you were talking about, Canzano, went out and reported that the Pac-12 agreed on a grant of rights. There was an agreement on the grant of rights. And Ross Dellinger then said about minutes later, she said, yeah, it was a verbal agreement. It was a verbal agreement on a grant of rights in which there's no media deal. All the reporters have known that for weeks. And there's no value in that story. I'm paraphrasing what Ross Dellinger said, but basically that's what he said. Other reporters said as well. So I think that's as far as I'll go with that. But thanks for the call. Tony, Tough Tony. Yes, I did read the 247 Sports top 69. They ranked the 69 quarterbacks in the Power 5, and number 67 out of 69 was Ethan Kaliakmanis, the Greek rifle, the starting quarterback of the Golden Gophers. 67 out of 69. 14th ranked out of 14 starting quarterbacks. Even behind Wimsatt, the Rutgers quarterback. Ethan Kaliakmanis, a redshirt freshman last year. A game against Wisconsin, 19 of 29, over 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He was throwing darts, long passes, running out, getting away from the pass rush. True freshman wins the game. Minnesota gets the axe. Second time since 1993-94. The first time since 93-94. The Gophers have won the axe 2 games in a row. And Ethan Kaliakmanis, 4-star quarterback out of the state of Illinois. He looked fantastic at the end of the year last year. He's ranked 67 out of 69. The author of that 247 article was Clint Brewster, the son of Tim Brewster. And of course, Tim Brewster has been a butt of a lot of jokes here at Minnesota. So maybe that's why, I don't know. But Garrett Green, the West Virginia starting quarterback, was ranked 69 out of 69. There's no way Garrett Green should be ranked 69 out of... Take a look at that list. There's quarterbacks on that list that haven't played a lick, and they're ahead of Ethan Cadillac Manis and Garrett Green. Sam Jackson, who's been bounced around to 4 or 5 different schools, committed, decommitted, committed, decommitted, committed, decommitted. I'm going to be receiver, quarterback, receiver, quarterback, receiver. I'm at TCU. He goes to California, Berkeley. He's ranked 52. Come on, man. So I got fired up when I read that article. So that's the answer to your question. Greg, the Gophers play California 2025-28. Should we be concerned? Concerned about what, Tony? I'm not sure what you're asking there. I'm sure they'll still have a football program, hopefully. I'm all for Oregon State, Washington State joining the AAC. Come get some, boys. Welcome you with open arms. East Carolina Pirates. Kenneth Maynard says, come on in, Oregon State, Washington State. We're not afraid of you. Come all the way to the east side of the country. Fake Tom Osborne. Many of these reporters were Pied Pipers. Thank you for your super chat, Mr. Fake Tom Osborne. I appreciate it. Hopefully I haven't skipped over a super chat. Hopefully I haven't missed one. Hopefully now, Blake says Oregon State should be in the Big 12. Greg is getting wound up. Laura Weiss, Texas Tech, Red Raider. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Okay, so we're going to shut it down for the night. This is a shorter live show. I wanted to do something. I thought it was important. A bidding war. A mini bidding war between Washington State and Oregon State. At least there's some good news. A little bit of good news. You wanted AAC, Mountain West. Who's going to be able to pay more? It looks like it would be AAC in the short term. It'd probably be Mountain West Conference in the long term. Mountain West Conference would give you more travel partners. Closer travel. Better travel. Pros and cons, either way. However this breaks, I expect this to be breaking soon. As in real soon. Possibly tomorrow. So buckle up. Brace for impact. Stay close to Peek Around the Corner. We're going to be covering this. Continue to cover the Washington State, Oregon State, the Florida State story. We gave our first 3 picks against the spread for the week 0 games. Greg the Cooler's going to be Greg the Heater. We're going to be talking football here. We are 3 Thursdays away. 21 days away, Nebraska, Minnesota, Fox at Huntington Bank Stadium in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I am all fired up for this season, and I hope you are as well. And if you're fired up about this football season, 2023, you have to subscribe to this channel. Smash that like button. Share the video with your family and friends. Stay close to PATC. Until next time. From all of us at Peek Around the Corner, college football's Peek Around the Corner, to all of you, please, you all take great care of each other. Thank you so very much.